Welcome to Super Nutrition Academy's Health Class with your host and registered holistic nutritionist, Yuri Elkaim. Tune in each week for up-to-date insights on breaking health news and best practices on how to eat for awesome health. It's time to get smarter, healthier, and regain your sanity in a world of information overload. And don't forget to join Yuri at supernutritionacademy.com so you too can master your nutrition and health.
Hey, it's Yuri Elkaim, and welcome to another episode of the Super Nutrition Academy Health Class. Happy to be with you because today we are going to be investigating the risks, the health risks of fast foods. Now, if you've been living on planet Earth over the past, 30 to 40 years, this is probably no surprise to you. But let's just say you came from a distant planet and you had no idea what fast foods are all about. Well, we're going to talk about them in this podcast. And even if you're familiar with fast foods, I'm going to bring you up to speed on some interesting stuff that's coming out of the CDC, or the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which is kind of the hub for a lot of research and statistics with respect to health and death and all that kind of stuff. So I saw some interesting stuff in the news as of late with respect to something related to fast food. So I thought I'd bring that up in this podcast. But first I want to start off with, again, a fundamental lesson that is going to help make this seem a little bit more understandable. This is really going to come as no surprise, okay? But the idea is that fast foods are not as good for your body as real foods. Okay, so if that comes as a surprise to you, then I'm happy that you're listening to this because you need to understand this information. So the whole idea with fast foods, the problem with them is several-fold. And part of the problem is that manufacturers, these food companies, they've got food chemists literally formulating their these foods, if you can even call them that, to really represent the ideal combination of salty, sugar, and fat, which really drives our neurotransmitters insane to make us want to crave these foods even more. So we become addicted to them. And obviously, when you're consuming foods that are loaded with synthetic ingredients, like we've already talked about several times, it becomes very problematic for the human body because we don't know how to handle all these toxins and chemicals coming in. Our liver can only detoxify so much, and the problem is that a lot of these chemicals and toxins are, for the most part, fat soluble. So they reside in your fat tissue. So they increase your susceptibility of gaining weight, not just because they're higher in calories and sugar and sodium, but simply because they have kind of fundamental components that are toxic, that are fat soluble. So not only do they reside in your fat cells, they also reside in your nervous system, because your nervous system is about 90% made up of fat. Okay, so that's a really big problem nowadays. And that's one of the reasons that we're seeing more and more health issues in the Western world. I'm going to share some crazy stats with you in a moment about this. But let's get through this kind of fundamental understanding first. So again, it's really no surprise that eating naturally grown whole foods is the way to better health. It's really not rocket science. The trick really is implementation. And the big allure with fast foods is really convenience. Okay, you work all day, you don't want to think about what to have for dinner, so you order a pizza or you go for dinner. Okay, that's generally the trend. And that's why with a lot of different meal plans and diets out there, it's really about preparation, right? So the best diet for you is the one that you're going to stick to. And obviously, hopefully that's based around whole foods. But the way to stick to something like that is really having the preparation and planning done ahead of time so that you're not going through your day at work, you're busy, you're stressed out, you might have kids, you might have other things going on. And the last thing you want to do when you get home is to stand in your kitchen and think about, okay, what on earth am I supposed to have for dinner now? And again, we only have so much brain power, and our computers only have so much memory or RAM, that by the end of the day, that's the last thing we want to think about. So you need to have a plan in place ahead of time. You have to have recipes ready to go, even if it's preparing stuff ahead of time. And that's a very, very important component to eating well on a consistent basis. Now, so I want to bring you up to speed on what this recent report out of the CDC showed. And basically, the heading says fast food makes up 11% of calories in the U.S. diet. So we're talking about fast food from McDonald's, Burger King, Wendy's, Pizza Hut. Okay, these are the main ones that they survey these individuals with. And again, 11% of the American diet is made up of this stuff. So the slogan that from Dunkin' Donuts that says "America runs on Dunkin'." I don't even know how that's able to exist. America does not run on Dunkin'. Literally, you go to Dunkin' Donuts, you're not going to be running at all if you eat that crap. So anyways, you could throw Dunkin' Donuts into that as well, because it seems like Dunkin' is a pretty big coffee chain / donut chain in the States. In Canada, we've got Tim Hortons, which is obviously very, very big as well. So the good news is that it's actually lower. So this 11% of calories coming from fast food is actually lower than it was between 2003 and 2006 when they last did this survey and study, where they found it was 13% of daily calories. So things are getting better. I think people are becoming more educated, and thanks to information like what I'm sharing with you, we're all able to make better decisions about our foods, because it's very, very challenging sometimes. For instance, if you're sitting at home and watching TV, you're watching whatever you're watching, and then a commercial comes on, and this commercial has this big juicy hamburger with this close-up of melting cheese over the burger and all these sizzling sounds. When you watch that, there are literally, you're going to have a Pavlovian response, just like Pavlov's dogs started drooling when they heard the bell, right? If you remember back to psychology. You can just simply by this kind of visual primer, right? They know. These advertising agencies know what gets our emotional kind of primal buttons going. So, one of the reasons why you want to, watch less TV. But again, the problem with fast foods is that it's heavily linked to eating more sugar, to eating more fat, and the wrong types of fats. Right? I think personally, this is my personal view on this. I think the big problem with fast foods, aside from the synthetic ingredients, is the poor quality oils that they contain. And I'm going to talk about this in a future episode, because there's some really, really fascinating but 40 years out of date news that's coming out now with respect to vegetable oils. And when you look at things like French fries, anything that's fried, right? They're all being fried in these vegetable oils that are very, very high in omega-6s, like canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil. These are all garbage oils. And inside the body, they create huge amounts of inflammation. Obviously, you don't turn into a blimp. I'm just talking about at a very microscopic level. But inflammation is linked to pretty much all disease processes in the body. So imagine cutting your finger with a knife. Your body goes through an acute inflammatory response to heal that. Now, eat the wrong foods over and over again that are very, very high in vegetable oils that become rancid due to the way they're processed, or the fact that they're heated at high temperatures, or they're exposed to oxygen. That same process of inflammation happens inside your body on a systemic level. And why this matters is this. I'm actually starting to piece together the pieces of the puzzle here. I'm going to share some stats with you right now. I'm going to show you how this is all kind of tying in. So, did you know, I'm going to ask you a question here. What do you think is the leading cause of death in not only the high-income countries, but the low-income countries? I'm going to give you a second to think about this. Okay, so I want, if you have your answer, I want you to have a little reality check. Again, this is coming from the World Health Organization now, okay? So the leading cause of death in high-income countries, and these are stats as of 2002, but they pretty much are the same today. High-income countries, first world countries, the leading cause of death, 17% of all deaths are caused by coronary heart disease. In the low-income countries, so the developing countries, the leading cause of death, about 11% of all deaths, coronary heart disease. Okay, so what's happening here? Why is coronary heart disease so prevalent in the Western world? Well, there's stress, there's things like that, but the thing to realize is that it's a very much a lifestyle related thing. So stress is huge, okay, in terms of increasing blood pressure and so forth. But if we look at the correlation between fast food consumption and the effect it has on the health of your cardiovascular system, let's look at a couple components here. First of all, fast foods are very high in sodium. Sodium, as we know, leads to an increased water retention. So when you increase your water retention, What does that do? That increases your blood volume. And when you have more blood volume, that exerts more pressure on your arteries and your veins. So you have a higher blood pressure, systolic and diastolic blood pressure numbers as a result of that. Okay, so you have more volume going through your blood vessels, therefore there's more pressure. Okay, that's a very, very simple way to think about blood pressure. Okay, if you have more blood volume due to more water retention, due to sodium retention, okay, because sodium will attract water to it. So if you have a Big Mac combo at McDonald's, I don't even know how many milligrams of sodium that is, but it's way more than your daily recommended intake of about 14 to 1500 milligrams of sodium. Okay. So that's kind of culprit number one is sodium. Now, secondly, if we look at vegetable oils, as I mentioned, create pretty intense systemic inflammation in the body, and we're seeing more and more of this now. And I'm going to share some interesting studies with you in a future episode. But for now, let's talk about this with respect to the health of your arteries. If you have inflammation inside your body, there is a greater increase of free radical damage. Okay, and if there's inflammation is also related to cellular damage because the cell membranes around your cells are more permeable to allowing bad things in and allowing good things out. So there's more damage at the cellular level. Now understand this, that your blood vessels are made up of cells. Okay, so if your cells aren't healthy, then your blood vessels will not be healthy. And if that happens, then there is a greater likelihood where you start developing cholesterol buildup because the cholesterol is used to kind of repair damage in the blood vessels. So cholesterol is not the problem. Cholesterol is simply just a Band-Aid to kind of repair things. And those are two big reasons why we're seeing more and more coronary heart disease. The third reason is that fast foods are very, very high in sugar. If you have a Big Mac combo, you're going to have there's actually a lot of sugar in the Big Mac itself, that special sauce they have. But if you have a Coke with that or a soda, again, that soda is very, very high in sugar. So you're going to, anywhere 50 to 60 to 70 grams of sugar in that pop. So what is the problem with sugar? Well, again, sugar is related to insulin levels, and insulin levels have a direct correlation with, or not even actually, just aside from the insulin stuff, we talked about fructose, right? So fructose is half of the sugar molecule. So if you consume sugar, half of that is fructose. If you consume a lot of it, your liver has to process that and convert it back to glucose. But as I said before, part of that byproduct, so a large part of it, is turned into triglycerides. And triglycerides are fats that end up becoming problematic in the blood vessels. So we have the combination of sodium, vegetable oils, and sugar that are found in fast foods that, in and above the synthetic ingredients in those fast foods, we got three big problems that are directly causing a weaker cardiovascular system. Okay, so you're weakening your heart and your arteries by consuming these foods. Now, in the low-income countries, you might think that, okay, generally they tend to eat more whole foods, which is true, and generally their diets are better. But one of the things that I've noticed personally is traveling to third world countries like Mexico or Central America or elsewhere, is that a lot of these indigenous diets now have, not just now in the last 10 years, but now as in the last 50 years, let's say, incorporate a lot more fried foods. So traditionally, if you look at the makeup of, for instance, the Mexican diet is very, very healthy traditionally. Avocados, natural grains and legumes, fresh foods. But this really hit me last time I was there. It's just like there was so much fried food. There's, chimichangas. Instead of having just a burrito or a taco, everything becomes like deep fried. And it's overkill. So again, we're throwing foods into these rancid vegetable oils, and we're consuming these oils in their fried form. So that's one of kind of my personal theory as to why more and more low-income countries are exhibiting more heart disease, because they're incorporating so many fried foods into their diet. And also there's the westernization of those countries. So now those countries are incorporating, McDonald's to a greater degree. China is now really ramping up their obesity rates because KFC's in there, McDonald's is in there now, and the consumption of those foods in China is staggering. So we're going to see a lot more North American Western problems in developing countries because they're becoming more westernized. So it's pretty interesting. But Yeah, so again, like the diseases of the modern world are really lifestyle related. So the diseases of the high income countries are coronary heart disease, and I'm listing them in order here. Stroke, okay, which is essentially a heart attack for your brain. That's pretty much the same thing. Then we've got lung cancers. Okay, that's number 3. Number 4 is lower respiratory infections. So we're talking about things like pneumonia, different things like that. There's actually so between lung cancers, lower respiratory infections, and the next one is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, we have 3 diseases that are linked to respiration, which is actually pretty surprising, okay? Really interesting stuff. I don't know if it could be the pollution or smoking, even though we don't smoke that much anymore. But again, really, really something to think about. Then we've got colon and rectal cancers, Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay, I want to talk about this one in a second. Alzheimer's and dementia is number 7. Then we've got diabetes, breast cancer, and stomach cancer. Okay. The low-income countries, after coronary heart disease, we have lower respiratory infections. Okay, so those are number 2. We have a lot of communicable diseases in the third world countries. That's just because of sanitation issues, cleanliness, lack of medical attention in some cases. So number 2 is lower respiratory infections, HIV/AIDS, perinatal conditions. Then we've got stroke and cerebral diseases, diarrhea. Okay, that's number 6. Malaria, tuberculosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and then road traffic accidents round out the top 10 there. So I want to go back to something which is interesting in the high-income countries, and that's Alzheimer's and dementia. Okay, this is something that does not exist in the third world yet. Okay, so something interesting to think about in relation to this inflammation that we've been talking about, because we now know that dementia is heavily linked to the degradation of the neurons and the synapses within your brain. And a lot of that is caused due to the fact that, or directly related to inflammation. So if you're constantly eating fast foods, lots of processed oils and sugar, which are directly causing inflammation in the body, the greater the likelihood that you're literally wearing your brain down. Okay, so it's really, really crazy stuff. So anyways, when you start to see commercials or foods in your grocery store that are in boxes and packages, and they make you want to believe that they are examples of healthy fast foods, I want you to think about something, okay? When you're consuming a package or processed food like a TV dinner or something along those lines, you are essentially trading your health for convenience. Look at the ingredient list on that packaged food, and if there is any mention of canola oil, soybean oil, corn oil, any of those vegetable oils, you should probably put it back, because I can guarantee you that 99% of the oils that are used in the food industry are criminally rancid. Okay, and I say criminally because these companies are using oils that are we're going to see more and more of this as we age and as we get over the next couple decades. There is going to be some serious problems related to vegetable oils. Okay, again, I'm going to talk very specifically about vegetable oils in an upcoming episode because it does merit a lot of attention. But so again, it really comes down to avoiding the crap, stick to the produce, and really plan ahead, prepare ahead, and get stuff done through Whole Foods. So I want to give you a couple tips to do that. First of all, if you've got kids, I would highly recommend that I would mandate that you involve them in the cooking process. This is very important because we all have bad habits. I have bad habits. I have my indulgences. You probably have yours as well. And if you think about it, part of the reason for that is because we've been brought up and conditioned to respond to certain situations with certain food. So instead of turning to fast foods as a solution to a problem, get your kids involved in the cooking process early on so they start creating better associations. They see you making a smoothie or making a healthy dinner. They want to get involved. Kids want to help. They want to be involved. They want to model you. They want to emulate what you're doing. So get them involved, show them that, hey, this is what mommy and daddy are doing, and they'll want to do that as well. So as they grow older, as they, subconsciously try to be more like you, they understand that, hey, my parents eat pretty well, now I can as well, as opposed to relying on, dialing, finger cooking, as Boston Pizza says, for the latest convenience packaged food or fast food. Secondly, as I mentioned, is preparing ahead of time. So if you have the week planned out ahead of you, again, there's a compromise. Obviously, you might not be eating the freshest of foods if you prepare stuff ahead of time and then put it in the fridge or freeze it. But again, that's probably better than, calling up for pizza or stopping in at McDonald's. Okay, so preparing ahead of time is really important. Third is find a staple. I mean, there's so many recipes online. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. We actually have, I've got a number of recipes with a number of nutrition programs I have between the Total Wellness Cleanse and Eating for Energy and Super Nutrition Academy. But it doesn't even matter. You could go online and find millions of recipes. You can go to foodgawker.com. You can go to Pinterest and find all sorts of amazing looking recipes and look for the ones that are healthy. But here's the thing. Try them out. Find 5 to 10 recipes that you really like and make those your staples. You can also try, for instance, you could have like Mexican Mondays or Tunisian Tuesdays. I don't know who's eating Tunisian food, but whatever kind of setup you want to do to make it fun, right, for you and your family. So you could have Mexican Mondays, you could have fajita Fridays, you could have soup Saturdays, and then once a week, have a little treats, whatever you want. I mean, usually for us, like pizza, we'll do Sunday nights, but it doesn't always happen like that. That's just for me. But whatever's going to work for you and your family. The whole idea is to get the whole family involved in the process. Take your kids shopping with you to the grocery store. Allow them to pick out the fresh produce. Allow them to see what a pineapple looks like as opposed to canned pineapple. Okay, so what does the real food look like as opposed to seeing what it looks like in the can or box? It's really important so they see that where it's coming from and they're able to make that distinction. So let's just sum up what we've talked about. Fast food sucks. That's pretty much as simple as it needs to be. Again, if you want to go more in depth about these topics, I really encourage you to join me at supernutritionacademy.com. We've got a ton of amazing stuff there, and you can learn more about for yourself. And until the next episode, where we'll be talking about some really, really fascinating stuff about food allergies, intolerances, and sensitivities, some recent stuff that's come up in the news that I want to share with you. Anyways, that's coming up in the next episode. Enjoy the day, take action on what we've talked about, and I look forward to seeing you soon.